Well, hey everyone. Welcome today on this Monday, April 29th, 2024, as some call it. And yeah, I'm excited to get into another conversation today. This one is titled The Great Disillusion and Awakening. So we're going to be dissolving structures and rediscovering astrological codes within the infinite play of human evolution. And I'm really excited to be joined by a new friend this lifetime, but certainly a common common soul in many lifetimes, Noa Lakshmi, to join me into this conversation. And what we're going to be doing is going over, sort of where we left off last time with the discussion around the divine masculine and divine feminine and the divine union, and really taking a deeper look into the astrological significance within this experience. So as above, so below, as within, so without, as with the universe, so with the soul, everything reflected in the stars is happening within us. This is this cosmic play to show us, no matter where we look, there we are. We are truly just finding ourselves in every aspect of this creation. So I'm really happy to be joined by Noa today, who's got a wide range of expertise in the astrological field. And so just excited to join into another conversation. So with that, thanks for being here, Noa, and I'll let you take it away.
Hey, hello everyone. Hey, Justin, and everyone that is joining us today. Yeah, very exciting conversation. Like Justin said, it will be a continuation of last week, and in the lines of what we were talking about, the divine masculine and divine feminine, but with more emphasis on astrology, or what we call astrology. And I actually feel that I would like to dedicate most of the focus, because that's just what has been coming through, most of the focus on Capricorn and the archetype of Capricorn and Saturn, and what we are experiencing right now collectively, how it's showing up for each and every one of us individually, and what it all means, and how it's really interesting to see that the distorted or inverted even interpretation that we have given particular archetypes and particular what we call planets, and how we see the distortion of how it's playing out in consciousness and in humanity. So I mentioned last week, I started touching on Capricorn and how it's the most, I would say, yeah, one of the most, if not the most, misunderstood archetype in the zodiac. And to no surprise, the moon today is in Capricorn as we are having this conversation, so no coincidences. And the gecko just confirmed that as well. And one of the reasons also why I feel so compelled and inclined to focus on Saturn is because right now, collectively, Saturn is in the sign of Pisces. Now, I do want to mention here that the astrology that I'll be sharing today is based on what people are familiar with tropical astrology. And there's value in both. Both systems are valid. I'm not into like whose system is better and one is wrong and one is right. Both systems have a solid ground, and both systems actually complement each other, although it might sound counterintuitive because based on Vedic astrology, Saturn right now is actually in Aquarius, is not in Pisces at all. But for the sake of simplicity, I will be focusing on the tropical side of astrology. And in that system, Saturn right now is in the sign of Pisces, which is the last sign of the zodiac. And the last sign of the zodiac basically represents the end. Pisces is the end in a sense, but just as an end to bring us into a new beginning, because there's really no such thing as an end. And Saturn will be moving into the sign of Aries, which is the beginning of everything, the 0 point, in 2026. I believe in February of 2026. And so there's something very significant in us meeting here today with the moon Capricorn, speaking about Saturn in the sign of Pisces, what it all means, what we are seeing in the world, how does that apply to you on a personal level, on a practical level. So we'll dive into all these things, and I don't want it to necessarily be a lecture, Justin, because I know that you also have a lot of wisdom when it comes to this, even if you're not like quote unquote an astrologer. So obviously I would love to keep this as a conversation, and then letting people chime in a little bit later, and I'm always stoked and happy to receive questions.
Yeah, thank you for that. I mean, and I'm happy to jump in the conversation wherever I'm able to. It is such a I'm definitely more of a student when it comes to astrology. It's something that I love to learn about, but it's a system that I haven't dove too deeply into, other than just the I mean, because there's so many layers. I mean, I've certainly spent some time looking through things, but the layers just keep going and going and going and going. So I love learning about that. And yeah, on the topic of Vedic versus Western astrology, I like how you mentioned that. It does seem in my experience that Western or tropical astrology seems to be a bit more accurate energetically, as far as like doing charts for people and the energies that they embody. But like you said, there's still value in the Vedic astrology model. And a lot of the lore comes from the Vedic astrology way of looking at things. So there's exciting elements that are contributed from the Vedic lens. So I appreciate you mentioning that aspect as well. So yeah, I don't have a whole lot more to add at this point, but I'm just excited to jump in, and did want to mention that if anybody at any point has any questions, feel free to raise your hand and I'll get your mic open. And when there's an opportune moment, we'll get to your question during the talk. So thanks, Noah. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate what you shared as well. Yeah, there's oh God, the rabbit hole of astrology is endless. That's for sure. It's so infinite, and that applies to our birth chart. Actually, like, it's fascinating to me how, and I've been a student of astrology since I was born, basically. But on a professional level, getting more and more into charts. I don't know how many years now. It's been a while. And it's fascinating to me how I keep receiving new insights from my chart, and it will continue to happen. I will get a download, or I will get an insight of a particular aspect in my chart that is relevant to what I'm experiencing in any given moment in life. And I will receive this information like, oh, this particular placement, or whatever I'm here to transform, whatever I'm here to bring forth, another layer of that reveals itself to me from my chart, no matter how many times I've looked at my chart. And it's a living entity. That's how I like to explain it. And same thing applies to other people's charts. Like, I can do a reading with somebody for the third or fourth time that they come to me, and the chart will speak something new to me. So it's very important to realize just our birth chart, just like us, it's a representation of our soul and our evolution, individually and collectively. And so it's not a stagnant thing, although it's a snapshot of a moment when you were born. That was the alignment in that particular moment, but it's a living, breathing, ever evolving organism in a sense. It's a really beautiful thing. And astrology is it's an ancient science, and it is a sacred science. People may not see it as science because it's not science in the way that we know it. Like, you're not going to put it under a microscope and get any evidence that, 1 + 1 = 2 or whatever. It's not chemistry in that way, but it is science in the sense that it is methodical, and it is cyclical, and it operates and works on rhythms. And after so many years of seeing charts and understanding the deeper meaning of astrology, I can tell you it's undeniable. It's absolutely undeniable. And it has such a deep spiritual layer to it. And to me, astrology is such a beautiful blend of science, as what we call science, and spirituality. And it is such a beautiful bridge of the masculine and the feminine in a sense. And there's such a divine play that is just a picture or a representation of what's happening in human consciousness.
Yeah, I mean, it truly is a science, and I love how Santos Bonacci he'll say that it's the true science. It is the science. It is the dominant, maybe not dominant, but the top of what we can examine and look at to truly have a deeper understanding of ourselves and the system around us. And it is that interplay that creates the dynamic expression of change and continuation. So you mentioned the birth chart being the snapshot at that moment, and how that can be studied for lifetimes to really get the intricacies of what's contained within. But then consistently what's happening is your snapshot of what you imprinted into this is interplaying with the cosmic, continual, ever-changing movement of these celestial bodies and the energetic imprint that they're giving to you. So there's no end to knowing how that affects you, and not that we need to be in this state of worry or anxiety that there's so much happening all of a sudden, and that we have to be looking at every which direction. But it just helps to give a deeper insight to, okay, this is why I might be feeling this way at this time, because I've got these bodies affecting me in this way. And ultimately the challenge is to find balance within that regardless. So no matter what the external influences are, I find that internal balance. But God is always giving us this continual challenge of moving these very powerful entities around so that they're constantly affecting us. And that's kind of the fun of the game, is to find balance no matter what's happening around us. That's the parable of building the house on the solid rock, not the sand, so that when the storm comes along, when whatever sort of celestial event happens, we are found in that space of balance. We are still able to tap into our internal North Star, our internal compass, our internal place of stability, and yeah, be still. So yeah, thanks for that. Just wanted to mention that a little bit. Oh, you're muted. Yeah, sometimes Telegram will automatically do it if it. Yeah,
Telegram will automatically do it. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Oh, okay. I'm glad you mentioned that, because there's something it's very important for me to convey when it comes to astrology, because I also see many people, if it's astrologers or people that are into astrology, that you can get to identify and in a sense kind of like become a victim or a puppet of the astrological show, and it doesn't work like that. It's like none of us is a victim, so to speak, or just in the mercy of our birth chart or whatnot, or whatever the astrology that is happening. mean, there are some things that, yeah, we can say, oh, Mercury's in retrograde, and I see the patterns, you know, that happen during that time, and different things that occur. And at the same time, we are in the power seat. And just like you said, Justin, it's whatever the play is, whatever the show is for us to work with, rather than just kind of be under the influence, or this is happening to me and that's why A, B, and C is happening. But it's actually just to have an awareness. And again, it's undeniable when I see charts and different transits that occur in a person's life. You know, you can see undeniably, well, it's really all a matter of timing. Life is timing, and we don't need to fight, and we are not a victim of whatever the circumstances of the moment. This is just what is occurring in someone's life, or in humanity's life, for the purpose of the greatest evolution. Because our soul constantly, and this is what we see in the chart, the soul constantly moves us in the direction of our greatest evolution. And nothing is set in stone when it comes to the chart, because there are multiple, just like for humanity also, there are multiple timelines that can manifest. Multiple. That's why a chart can never be interpreted just on its own. I got to speak to the individual and really see, who am I speaking with? Because the same chart can be manifested very differently based on that individual's, you can say, level of consciousness. And this is the kind of, I blend many different modalities of astrology, but the one that has been my solid ground is called evolutionary astrology. And Jeffrey Wolf Green that's the person that basically just channeled the whole system. And he's all about soul evolution. That's the premise of evolutionary astrology. It really looks into the soul and the soul evolution and the soul story as it pertains to one's own personality in any given moment. And Jeffrey made something very, very clear, which I appreciate so much, that he said, this is what I'm conveying right now when it comes to the chart, that there are 3 different levels of consciousness. And so you got to speak to the person and actually see, like, who am I connecting with? Right? There's the consensus consciousness, like the status quo, basically. Those are people that don't necessarily, at least on a surface level, don't necessarily care so much about spirituality and truth and, you know, evolving beyond this physical plane. And then there's the individuated level of consciousness. And then there's, I don't remember the name, the term, but that's when you've gone through the process of the individuation, and now you in the more, you can say, spiritual maturity, and seeing the wholeness and the oneness, and the aspirations and the values also reflect that. So the same chart can be read very differently based on the level of consciousness. And that is really a key point when it comes to evolutionary astrology. Was there something you wanted to say, Justin?
Well, I was just going to add in that what you mentioned of these different stages in this evolutionary model, it's the same as the one true story, the hero's journey. This is the model that we're constantly facing and playing with in this game of attachment to what was, to this false identity, the egoic construction, whether that be societal imprints or family or whatever. We have to find and break away from that to create that individuation, which is the prodigal son breaking free from what was, to step up on their own, and then finding their way once again to facilitate a deeper connection without that attachment. So it's this constant process that we're facing. It doesn't just happen once. It's a continual effort to say, okay, I need to recognize what is no longer serving me, break away from that, create that individuation, but not do so in a space to where I'm becoming apathetic or disconnected from the world at large, and come back into that more connection more deeply. So I just thought that was beautiful to note how that's the same that we're all doing. It is this continual evolution of the hero, recognizing that I am the one in this story to step up as the hero and to overcome. And but there's also a falling part of this story as well, and not to beat myself up for those aspects either, but just to recognize the beauty that they're bringing to give me a room and depth for further expansion. So I love that. Just wanted to mention.
Wow, thank you. That is perfect, because it's also a great segue to this whole Saturn in Pisces, and it is like the hero journey. Like each archetype, if we and now when I say archetype, I am referring to what we call the planets. So Saturn is an archetype. Each archetype is on its own hero's journey, and Saturn has been completing now his journey coming into Pisces. So exactly what you said, Justin. Now with Pisces is about dissolving, right? So that's, we also call this talk, or the title for this talk is The Great Disillusion. All right. And Saturn is in a very basic astrology is about structures and form. Okay. And that's something that I want to talk about, because it's not just the structures and the form, but the kind of structures and the form, because it's not like structures are bad, form is bad. No, but it's what kind of structures, what kind of form. And this is the beautiful thing about Saturn now being in Pisces, in which is dissolving, because Pisces, the archetype of Pisces, Neptune, is about dissolving, right? It's the end. And a lot of times we hear like Pisces is a water sign, and this is going to relate to you, Justin, as a Pisces sun sign. Pisces, this is one of my astrology teachers that I took it from, or I received it from, that he said Pisces is not so much water, it's actually ether. And it really resonated with me. Like if you take Cancer and Scorpio, like the water signs are Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. That's the water trine, the holy trinity of the sacred waters. And it's, in Pisces, yes, there is the water element, but it's kind of like, think about in terms of water, if we look at the ocean, Cancer will be, when you dive in and you kind of get to, you're not on the surface, but you just a little bit after the surface and kind of starting to get into the depth. But there's still a little bit of sun that you can see from up above. That's Cancer. Scorpio, boom, you're in the depth. That's when the lights are off. You're starting to go deeper, and that's the scorpionic waters, and it can feel scary, and really there's just no, you've left the surface, like you can't really see that anymore. And then Pisces is really like this depth and bottom of the ocean, in which it feels like a different world. If any of the ones that are listening here now and later, if you've ever gone scuba diving, and if you've done like really deep dives, because there's different levels, and we get to a certain level of depth in which in my experience, it feels like a complete outer world. And that's Pisces. It's like you don't even feel that you are in water anymore. And that really is the Pisces energy, the Pisces archetype. And that's when things dissolve. It's you, in a sense, you forget about what was, and even who you are and where you are. And it helps to bring to life what is next. Because after you experience that whirl, like again, going back to the scuba diving, I remember from many experiences that after a dive of 30, 40 minutes, when you get back up and you back on the boat, it's just like, I'm a different person. It's hard to express in words, but it's just this, there's something deeper that touches you and kind of molds you into something else. It's so in our cellular memory, I feel, as well. And that's also very Pisces. And then there's this rising back up to the surface, that's Aries, and there's a newness. And even what Justin, you said about the hero journey, that is a continual process. It happens again and again and again. So Saturn being in Pisces now, that's exactly what Saturn is experiencing. It's this dissolving and bringing end to structures and forms that don't promote harmony, peace, and balance. And I use these words, harmony, peace, and balance, because, and this is something we started speaking about last week, is Saturn being exalted in the sign of Libra. That's where Saturn is at its most powerful position. And Libra is about peace, balance, harmony, and beauty. So the structures that we've been steeped in our society, in our generation, as we know it, these are structures that don't promote life. They don't promote the individual thriving, the beauty of expression, the balance and the harmony of our society. And one of the, I would say, the most prominent structures that we can associate with Saturn in the distorted, inverted, false way is the patriarchy. And that is such a, again, in modern astrology, you would always hear astrologers speaking about the patriarchy and bringing Saturn into it, that the Saturnian energy is the one that we associate with the patriarchy. But now Saturn being in Pisces is dissolving that, because what has happened is Saturn is the foundation. Now, I was walking around a couple of days ago. I mean, Saturn has been so deep in my field and so prominent. And I look around, I'm like, everything is Saturn. Like everything has a form in some way, shape, or form, you know, even if it's kind of like chaotic, you know, like the jungle, but there's a form. So without Saturn, it will just be kind of blob of Piscean energy. And the structure of our body, and I spoke about this last week, that is very much Saturnian. It's the vessel, the form that gives home to the soul. And that form can either be a prison, or it can be the foundation and the temple for the soul to dance in. And
yeah,
that's
like
exactly what. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's like what we spoke of last week with Saturn being that masculine energy, providing that containment, giving that structure and that form for her to dance in, which Saturn being in Pisces would be the sort of matrimony between these masculine and feminine energies, where she is dissolving. So the Latin phrase "solve et coagula," to dissolve We have to dissolve in order to reform. We have to have this sort of seeming chaos of destruction in order to reform into the order, which is what Saturn brings. But because Saturn has been in this sort of pattern for so long, the formations have become crusty, if you will. They've become very, very stagnant and very, very, very complacent in what they've created. So that's where the Piscean energy comes along to remove all of that so that we can reform once again, but not to demonize Saturn. You know, there's a lot of people who love to do that and say that, oh, Saturn is Satan or Saturn is the devil and, you know, all these other sorts of things. And it's like, well, no, everything has a duality. Everything has its inverted form. So yes, there is an inverted format of that Saturnian energy. And that's what a lot of the cabal love to play into. But in actuality, there's such a necessity to having that structure and formation to give that canvas to paint on, you know, to give that ability to have a kingdom where there is order and safety and beauty, but the allowance of freedom paired with it. There has to be both, you know, there has to be both of that. So Saturn is often compared to Chronos or time. And that's the sort of rings of Saturn, this sort of binding, perceivably binding experience that we do when we participate with time. But that's on us as well. We've just given too much power to time. It doesn't mean that time, Chronos, is a bad thing. We love time to tell a story. A timeline creates a beautiful dynamic interplay so that we can have an expression to paint a story on, to have a beginning, middle, and end of a hero's journey, of a character evolution. We love that. We love to live through that, and we love to tell that. So there's nothing wrong with time. But when time as that structure starts to dictate and govern every aspect of our lives, that's when it creates a problem. That's when we start to feel overwhelmed and feel as if we're a victim bound to this time aspect, when in reality, we're in control. We're the, you know, and that's why the 12 is always balancing as the 13. And they love to demonize the number 13 because we're supposed to find balance in the 12 to become the 13, to use all of the 12 to our benefit, not to be bound and restricted by any of them any which way, but truly have them as a part of our family. The 12 Knights of the Round Table, the 12 disciples, we are the 13th, to stand in the middle and find that balance point within all of it. So yeah, this is an amazing discussion, and I just wanted to add that little bit, but thank you, Noah.
Oh yeah, everything that you add is golden, is super golden, Justin. I super appreciate that. And you mentioned the word chaos, which is so Piscean. What can be perceived as chaos because there's no form, right? And that's exactly what is like such a representation of Saturn being in Pisces. There's chaos, and it can show up in people's individual lives, and then what we are seeing on the global stage. And again, a reminder, Saturn is staying in Pisces until 2026. And actually, the later degrees, because we have 30 degrees in each sign, and we divide each sign into 3 decans, it's called, from 0 to 10, or from 0 to 9, and then from 10 to 19, and then 19 to 29, and then we have the 0 of the next sign. And so each decan itself, I mean, again, when we look at astrology and the rabbit holes, that it's unending because each decan can be interpreted different. The 0 from 0 to 9 Pisces is vastly different than 19 to 29. And the later degrees of Pisces, some astrologers say those are the most difficult degrees. And what do I mean by difficult? If you're not equipped to go with the flow and see chaos as a blessing, that can be a very, very challenging experience on an individual level and even collectively. And this is what we will be seeing as we are approaching 2026. Because right now, Saturn is at 16 degrees Pisces. It's right in the middle. It just crossed into the second decan, into the third decan, I'm sorry. So and Saturn is going to go retrograde next year. So, I mean, that's why it's a slow moving transit. It's about 2.5 years. So we're going to get into the later degrees of Pisces, Saturn and Pisces, as we move more into 2025. And that's when we can experience the most chaos, collectively speaking, and the dissolution that I'm speaking about. Yeah, the dissolving. And going back to the patriarchy is, it's a structure that is basically built on a distorted, inverted, and basically false interpretation of Saturn as an archetype. And that's when, Justin, you refer to Satan. Exactly. I mean, that's also part of the plan, to take Saturn and convey him. I don't even think it's him, but convey it as Satan. It can be. I spoke about this last week, that each archetype has the potential of multiple expressions, just like each person, can manifest its personality, its soul's spark in different ways in different times. So the patriarchy is built on this distorted structure, basically. And so going back to what I said earlier, that Saturn is the foundation. It's like, in Hindu tradition, they have Shiva, and Shiva is the base. It's the foundation that holds everything. And in some way, as much as Saturn is considered to be like so much of the physical form, but I see it as this foundation of consciousness. And so the foundation of consciousness is upside down, and so it's weak and unstable. Anything that is built on false ideas, on distorted interpretations, is going to be weak and unstable. And that breeds chaos, disharmony, and various different manifestations and imbalances that are not necessarily to support life. Right? And Saturn also is associated with laws. When you look at police and governments and laws, that's all Saturnian. But that's just because the inverted reality is based on man's made laws, as opposed to divine laws. And that's the true, pure expression of Saturn. It's this divine design of our creation, and a strong foundation to let consciousness arise from that place in its pure form. And that breeds, going back to Saturn being exalted in Libra, that breeds harmony, balance, beauty, and so much more. Because I see, Saturn and Venus are intertwined in a sense, because Saturn is exalted in Venus's house. It's like when Saturn goes to Venus's house, he's like, yeah, let's do it, honey. Let's make something good here. And so it's a beautiful process. It might not be so pleasant to watch or experience, just like in our own lives. I mean, come on, who doesn't or hasn't experienced perceived chaos, right? And I know even just recently, the last half of last year, I was just dissolving to my core. Just got to a point. It was like, I don't even know who I am and what I am and what is, like, just nothing, and that can feel chaotic. That can feel chaotic. And this is when, and that's why Pisces is also associated with like craziness and insanity, because when the core is not strong, again, going back to that Saturnian the foundation is not strong, then it's easy to get swirled in that chaos.
Yeah, which is again just looking at the balance of the masculine and feminine forces within all of us, to not lean too far one direction or the other. Because if we have this continual evolutionary way that is ungrounded, it does lead to it does lead to that sort of insanity. It leads to that schizophrenia, or just a feeling of overwhelm, of not knowing which way is up or which way is down. So there's pitfalls in that side of the polarity, but there's also pitfalls in having too much stubbornness and too much resistance to change whatsoever, that we stay stagnant and stuck. So there has to be this balance and this almost enjoyment of that phase, you know, to where we get kind of excited when we go through struggles, or we go through moments where everything seems topsy-turvy or upside down. We are a cyclical being. We go through the fourfold nature of man. We go through the cycles. We go through the seasons. We have to go through a fall in order to die, so that we can be reborn and flourish again. And this process continues to repeat. It continues to repeat within us, not just every year, although the year is a great model to examine, but this is moment by moment. This is what phase, not that we need to be constantly identifying what phase am I in, but it does help to have that perspective to say, okay, I'm in a fall right now. I'm in a fall. I'm approaching my death, which is a death of what no longer serves me. And it might feel intense, it might feel scary, it might feel overwhelming in that moment if I let it, but that's the choice. I can come back and I can alchemize that experience. I can transmute that and say, you know what? I'm not going to let this lead weigh me down. I'm going to transmute it into gold. I'm going to shift back into gratitude and say, okay, there's something bigger at play here. There's something that needs to happen. I might not even see what that is with my 5 physical senses and my mind. And this is where it comes back to trusting and surrendering to the unseen, trusting and surrendering to that divine will that's moving me in a direction that I might not be able to conceptualize in this moment. But as long as I trust it and have that trust fall where I lean back and just let the river take me, let that flow move me, then it's always going to bring me to that space of higher potential. And I don't need to have the mind understand every single detail along the way, just trusting that this inherent goodness, this God, is there with us always. And it's bringing us to that space of a more goodly, godly, higher expression. And all I have to do is trust. So it's a beautiful expression and experience every single time to go on that trust fall and allow it all to dissolve away so we could reform and be reborn anew.
Yes, yes. Deeply appreciate that you brought this up, because this is a very Pisces thing, the surrender, you know, and this is part of Saturn being in Pisces. When it comes to the individual level, let's just bring in more in like the practical and day-to-day application or personal application is, let's say for individuals that are still holding on tightly or refusing change to whichever degree, it's going to be much more difficult, because it's kind of like, you know, the river, when the river is strong, you know, if you've ever been in a strong river, you know that force is, it's like you can try and hold on to the rocks and the leaves and all the branches, but it's going to take you. It's eventually it's going to take you. And so Saturn being in Pisces is like, it's just, you just encapsulated it so perfectly, Justin. It's exactly that. Like anything that is being held onto, any structures, any form, including this physical vehicle, you know, because there's many changes that we are experiencing even just in our physical bodies, that, you know, holding on to any particular way or form or even regimen, the river is going to take you. So it's just a matter of how freely and joyfully you got to go with the river. And when you let go, it's like, woohoo, just like that's so the surrender that you're speaking of. I mean, that's why Jupiter, by the way, is exalted in Pisces. Jupiter is exalted in Pisces. So because it's Jupiter is the faith. Jupiter is that I just know. I don't need any evidence. I just know. It's intuition, right? It's woohoo. And it's exalted in Pisces because Pisces is the ultimate surrender, so to speak. It is that it's beyond believing. There's no belief when it comes to Pisces. It's just a sense of knowing because it's God. It is that everything. It's just everything. And so we say surrender, but in a sense, it's just you get to a point in that Pisces archetype level of consciousness in which it's not even about believing. I'm not even surrendering to anything. It's just is, it's like there's just that. So Saturn being in Pisces, let's just say it's not the happiest place for Saturn to be if we want to look at it in this way. Because it's like the form and everything is dissolving. And so in our own consciousness, individually speaking, this would be probably one of the greatest recommendation for our times right now is whatever changes or even unknown. That's the thing, is like there's so much unknown territory in our lives right now. And I'm not just talking what's happening in the world and the global stage, but even on a personal level, I speak to people and it's almost every single person. There's some sort of like this unknown, and it just, kind of like get used to it in a sense. And like Justin, like you said, it's a complete surrender, but even go beyond the surrender and embrace and accept that divine will and your will are one. So Pisces is so much about aligning that. That is Christ consciousness, ultimately, Pisces. And so it's also kind of bringing whatever distorted structures and form that Saturn has been programmed, which are false programs for Saturn. It's like, oh, Saturn is not remembering. This is the truth, Christ consciousness. Yeah, right. So we are dissolving anything that is not fueled by this notion of love and compassion and oneness and devotion to God. Because ultimately, Saturn is devotion. And Pisces also is devotion. It's a very devotional archetype. And in the Pisces consciousness, yes, it is devotion to God. And it's like we move through all the stages being devoted to maybe different things and different people or whatnot. And then we get to, right, there's all of these things that I'm passionate about or I love, I feel drawn to. Ultimately, it's all in devotion to the one, to God, which manifests in everything and everyone, and everything is divine, ultimately, right? So Saturn, this is something that I love speaking about because it's interesting how Saturn, there's so many D words that are associated with Saturn. Determination, discipline, dedication, and devotion. And I see that, devotion encompasses all the other ones. Sometimes when people say, oh, wow, you're so disciplined to live this way and do this and do that. And to me, it's not discipline. It's that's more, I would say, the masculine side of things. And then the feminine will come in with devotion. That's just being devoted to life. I can't even describe it. It's just living in devotion. And because Capricorn, the archetype of Capricorn, which is Saturn's home sign. So Saturn is exalted in Libra, but next door, its own home is Capricorn. Or not exactly next door, but a few houses down the road, is Capricorn. And Capricorn has been distorted big time. Like I said, it's probably the most misunderstood archetype in the zodiac, because we associate Capricorn in modern astrology. You would hear like business, climbing up the corporate ladder. That's very Saturnian, or at least the connotations that we've been applying to Saturn and Capricorn. It's achievement. It's being out there in the external world and achieving the certificates, the diplomas. Look at what I've built. That's can be referred or can be traced to Saturn in modern society and in modern astrology. And that, again, going back to the fact that everything has been based on a false foundation, or on a distorted foundation that is so steeped in patriarchy, because there's more value. And again, this is more like the majority of the population, our society, is there's more value to achievements. Show me your certificate, show me your diploma, show me this, show me that, than one's own, let's say, spiritual evolution, or this dedication to cleaning the body, to actually say, okay, the genetic shit stops with me, and I'm going to go in and clean house, not just physically, but on all levels. So it stops right here. And there's so many individuals that are devoted to that and are beacons of light in our world. But for the majority of society, are they going to be valued more than like the MDs or the scientists or whoever has, whatever $1 million in the banks from building these multi-million-dollar companies? So the whole concept of Capricorn has been, or the archetype of Capricorn has been completely, I would say, demolished in a sense, or very distorted, that it's the actually climbing, instead of climbing up the corporate ladder, is climbing up the spiritual mountain, the evolutionary mountain. And that itself has so many different layers. And what does that actually mean? That is not just sitting in meditation, but it is the body. And Capricorn is an earth sign, after all. Saturn is about physical form and reality. And so it's that embodied part that is very important as well. And there are so many, experts out there, even in the spiritual community. And I'm not devaluing anyone or anything, but it's just, what is the level of embodiment? What is the level of spiritual maturity? And so all of that is like that's the disillusion, that's the dissolving of all the forms and all the structures that have been built on sand, like you said that earlier, on just distorted foundation. It's kind of like building something on nothing and expecting it to last, or expecting it to yield good results or expansive results. Like there's no expansion coming from distortion. It might seem like expansion for a period of time before things collapse.
Yeah, it's amazing stuff. Thank you. Thanks for sharing all that. And the Capricorn is certainly a pivotal moment as the what that would be signify the end of the fall and the beginning of winter, right? Is Capricorn. So just seasonally,
Capricorn. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So seasonally, it's a seasonal shift. So every time we have these cardinal signs show up, it represents that, and that's right. It's a cardinal sign, correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
So it represents that seasonal shifting. So every cardinal sign is going to represent a pretty pivotal choice that we face and choice that we make. Are we going to, in that one specifically, are we going to continue falling into old patterns and old ways? Is this this winter, this death, this dissolution of all the old patterns, is it going to bring us into a newer, higher expansion that we can find in Pisces shifting into Aries? And are we going to arise into our new form, to take the form to shift from the goat to the ram? Or are we going to sink further into our devolution and fall further and need to go into more cycles, the samsara, the wheel of karma, to experience that death again and again until we decide to get it right? So Capricorn is a huge pivotal moment of choice within this story, within this hero's journey. Do we take the hardship that we found within the fall and fall into that victim mentality and continue cycling in that sense? Or do we use it as leverage to transmute that, alchemize it, and to rise into a new form? So yeah, I mean, it's every single aspect of this story is so beautiful, and we can relate it to so many layers of our lives at different points. And that's what they were intended to do. That's why God gave us these forms to see, so we would have an external representation of what's happening within us, within our consciousness, within our stories, and to find strength in that, to find that sort of reignition of purpose. And all we have to do is look up. All we have to do is just check the stars and see that, God loves us so much that we can never forget, no matter how far we fall into the state of forgetfulness, deception, control, whatever. We can't take away the stars from ourselves. We can't take away these luminaries and these celestial bodies showing us just how perfect we are. So no matter how far we fall into forgetfulness, we can always remember once again. And that's what they're here to do.
Yeah. And as you mentioned this, Pisces is so much about forgiveness. So let us remember that even Saturn being in Pisces right now is, knowing everything that we know. And there's so much that we still don't know, but knowing everything that we know about what's going on behind closed doors, behind the scenes, in many different industries, and all the distortion and everything that we're talking about. With all of that Saturn moving through that Piscean energy that is about forgiveness and compassion, towards ourselves first and foremost. So this can be a time, because Saturn is associated with karma, in the sense of you reap what you sow. And it's just, it's just a very simple equation. And previous lives and in this life, we experience what it is that we planted. You plant a seed. If you plant an orange tree, you're going to get an orange tree. If you plant an avocado seed, don't expect to have oranges. It's like you plant what it is that you want to see. And so that's why Saturn is considered to be the teacher and like the tough personal trainer, but it's tough love, because it keeps showing us, well, are you in integrity with your soul? If you keep telling me that you want orange tree, why are you keep planting avocado seeds? Here are I'm showing you, here are the orange seeds. Here are the little babies that you can plant. So it might seem tough, but it's to show us, number one, what we are made of, who we truly are. And number two, it's to align us with that integrity? Are you in integrity with what? Again, integrity with oneself, with your soul. And if you say you want something or that you value something, then to be in integrity with that, with the way we think, with the way we speak, with the way we act. Everything matters, and that's what Saturn teaches us. Matter. Everything matters because everything has the potential to materialize, to come into form. Saturn and Jupiter really work together so beautifully, because Jupiter is that, wow, I have this vision and whatnot, but without Saturn to really show you, like, this is what needs to be done, then not much can be done. So going back to what I started saying about the forgiveness and compassion, because there's, karma at play. But again, we're not a victim to this karma at any given moment. This is the power that Saturn shows us. I can say, okay, got it. Thanks for all the tough lessons. Thank you for all the maybe unpleasant experiences. Got it. And then to forgive oneself, to have compassion, and then really apply it to all people. Really, it's like all people, even the most horrendous things that are happening in the world, underneath it, there's a great force of love. It's happening for a divine reason that may not be clear to us right now. And that can be the greatest challenge. That can be the greatest challenge for many. How can I find compassion and forgiveness for what seems to be the most horrendous act of a human or a group or a nation or whatever it may be? But that's going back to the Pisces. There's a divine love here at play that is unknown and mysterious. So there's that invitation to, now with Saturn moving through Pisces, is to find even greater compassion and forgiveness for oneself and everyone. And it might even happen organically for many people, actually, just visions or dreams. The dream state is very, very potent as Saturn moves through Pisces, which is the dream world. Because let us remember that Neptune, which is the ruler, I like that word, the director, I'd say, of Pisces, is in Pisces. Yeah, so we have both of them moving through Pisces. Neptune has been in Pisces since 2011. So to no surprise, right? That's like the 2012 that everybody was hyping about. And it was just merely that. That's what started so much of what we are seeing now, because everything is cyclical in astrology. And so 2011, Neptune went into, it was April, actually, shortly after the equinox of 2011, Neptune went into Pisces. And if you look back at your life from 2011 and especially 2012 up until now, so that's a 12-year cycle, Jupiter cycle, just review it. Just review it, the last 12 years. And what was initiated back then in your life? Where were you, and how is that showing up in your life now? What started back then? And then collectively it started a big, very profound spiritual awakening, that much of it also involved, some of the circus show that we are seeing now, disguised as spirituality, but that's part of the illusion, because Neptune is illusion. Neptune is kind of like, ooh, look at my magic, just to kind of distract you from what is actually going on. It's the media. Neptune is the media, movies, like the news, everything we see on television. So that's also part of what is happening. And it's just it's going to be an amazing time in our evolution, because both Saturn and Neptune moving into Aries, and they're going to meet at 0 Aries in 2026. They're not meeting in Pisces. That's another very interesting. They're not meeting in Pisces. It's like Neptune is just a little bit ahead. And going back to the degrees, I know I'm like, there's so many threads. Going back to the degrees, Neptune now is in 29 degrees. And it's going to dance on those last degrees of Pisces from now until 2026, because it's going to go retrograde and then direct again. But it's going to stay in the vicinity of that last decan of Pisces and the last part of the last decan of Pisces. And that's the chaos. And Saturn is right there behind. I got you back. I promise you there's going to be some form coming. There's going to be some new formation coming. I'm just keep surrendering, like you said earlier, Justin. And so there's like this great disillusion and great awakening with a humongous dose of surrender at this time. Yeah. There's more I can say, but let me pause right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's so fitting that this is all happening now. And of course, because this is biblical, this is a time of transition. This is a movement from one era, from one eon, from one age to another, to where we get to dissolve all of the prior experience, learn from it, forgive ourselves. I love how you touched on that. We have to, in order to fully transmute and move into this new iteration, this new earth, this heaven on earth reality, we have to forgive ourselves. And we have to forgive every part of ourselves, knowing that there is no one that is excluded from the wholeness. There is no one that is excluded from this unification within everything and everyone. So whatever sort of lower, dark, dismal aspect you want to examine, that's still a part of us. That's still a part of us that needs to be forgiven in order for us to truly transmute and work through. Now, don't confuse that to meaning we're just condoning all sorts of behavior. It doesn't mean, forgiveness doesn't mean that you just simply allow a sort of self-inflicting or harmful behavior to perpetuate. There's a necessity to come into justice with much of this, but justice paired with forgiveness is really the key to moving through this. It's the solution to and even in the word solution is that water to dissolve and to move away from all of these old patterns, and getting into this idea of self-deprecation, beating myself up for having been deceived or even taking part in the deception, is only going to keep us, it's going to impair us from moving forward fluidly. So really dissolving all of that, allowing us to step into, okay, we did that, and we get to learn from it. There's a benefit. God will transmute, goodness will transmute no matter how evil an act appears. God will transmute that act to the highest goodness, and that's through learning, and that's through continual evolution. But a big part of that is forgiveness. So we have to forgive ourselves. We have to forgive each other for that, so that we can let go of all of that old stuff and that old baggage, and truly step into what's coming and what's here. So I love how you tied all that together, and yeah, I'm just loving all of this. So thank you.
Yes. It's in the lines of what you said, Justin, like the forgiveness and just letting whatever was, dissolve with love and forgiveness. To remember that also Saturn being in Pisces, there's a lot of dissolving and letting go. And at the same time, because Pisces is dreams, and not just dreams at nighttime, but Pisces is the creative mind. It's the yeah, it's the field of dreams and visions. And Saturn being there is actually this call to bring form to your greatest dreams, really. And even when tapping into the collective consciousness on a pure soul level, not the distorted personalities, but on a deep soul level, the dream of humanity is that of goodness and love and beauty. And we have the opportunity to bring that into form with Saturn being there in Pisces, and zooming into more like the microcosm of individual dreams, whatever dreams that it's really on a, just ever since you can remember yourself, maybe you can tap into that dream. And it's not about what you're going to do when you grow up. It's not about that. It's almost like even something you might not share with people in your life, where you haven't, or it's just this deep yearning. And whatever it may be, it doesn't need to be like grandiose or anything like that, but there's that dream that you have. So with all the dissolving and letting things go, there's also bringing things into form. But what's in spiritual alignment with you? That's Saturn aligning all of us spiritually. Saturn being in Pisces, it's like the greatest spiritual alignment, literally, like kind of flicking things back into gear. And whatever is not in that alignment will be shown, right? And just that's the part of Saturn that might be unpleasant sometimes. It's going to show itself. And to bring that piece of forgiveness, to bring that piece of compassion is essential, is absolutely essential.
Yeah. And just also know that everyone is experiencing this energetic movement. So allowing that, having that compassion for others around that might react in a way that's unpleasant, when we start to see our world that we've grown comfortable fall away, the illusion dissolve, whatever sort of attachments we've grown with that are sort of uncomfortable to let go of. And so this causes a lot of can cause fear and anxiety within people. So as we're moving through, just know that these energies are very much affecting everyone around us. And not that we need to excuse any behavior, but just simply have that compassion and knowing that, like, okay, we're all going through a lot. So if I need to take a step away or take a deep breath before I respond to somebody, if they've triggered me or bothered me in whatever sense, then I can have that extra softness come in me, which is gonna allow me to flow through those experiences much more smoothly. So a good thing to remember.
That very important that you mentioned that. It's so true. And that's the spiritual maturity. That's when the spiritual maturity comes in. That's why Saturn and Mars will be considered to be in a square. Mars being Aries' landlord or manager, and Saturn being Capricorn, and there's a square there because Aries is an archetype. Mars is more impulsive, more like, you just pissed me off, and I'm just going to shoot fire at you or react. And coming from a more wounded place, you can say, or an unattended to inner child. And Saturn is that elderly. Capricorn is more like the elderly, mature archetype that sits on the top of the mountain and sees everything from a higher view. And it's like, why would I even react? Like, I'm seeing things from a much higher angle. And so we are maturing spiritually on such an accelerated pace right now. And of course, it's going to play out and manifest differently for different people. And it's not that one is better than the other. It's just like Justin, you mentioned this, and it's so valuable that to remember that every single person that you are interacting with is undergoing this spiritual surgery, and many people are not aware of it. So that's the other thing. They're just kind of feeling whatever they're feeling and experiencing whatever they're experiencing without having a full grip, so to speak, on what's happening. And so, and that is our test. I'm not saying it's easy, and sometimes it can be quite challenging, but that's the moment when we get the opportunity to, wow, really rise above whatever patterns, whatever karma that we have with ourselves. Because that's the thing with karma. It's nothing mysterious. You want to change your karma? Choose something different. That it's as simple as that. And sometimes it can be as simple as, I'm going to choose to feel differently. I'm going to choose to interpret the situation differently, or not even interpret it at all. I saw in the chat, Justin, a few days ago, I think he was Brother Sage. Is that his name? Yeah. He posted the 4 agreements. Don't take anything personally. Don't make any assumptions. Always do your best and be impeccable with your words. That is straight up Saturn. Like, just nothing else can be related to those 4 agreements than Saturn. It is so spot on, and it's such a great book, and it's so simple, and yet that can be the greatest challenge in whichever of those 4, right? So that can even be a change of karma for an individual. That, and you know, I'll speak from a personal experience where in the past, like taking things so personally, I would take things so personally. I have a lineup in the 4th house, you know, so it's like, oh my God. And then from there you spiral into whatever deprecating thoughts and I'm not good enough and all of that. So that is karma for an individual because it has many different implications. So that can be a change of karma if in a situation in which in the past, we would take things personally. There's that spiritual maturity that comes in and says, well, actually, let me choose otherwise. Let me just choose otherwise. I'm not going to make any assumptions here, and I'm not going to take things personally, and I'm going to choose a different thought or course of action. And right there, you change your karma. That's how we start to unravel the karmic baggage, so to speak, that comes with Saturn. And this is when we can look at our chart, and Saturn can show us very much so, where is the karma? Oh, and Justin, you earlier mentioned, you said the word lead, turning lead into gold, which I was so happy you said that, because the metal that is associated with Saturn is lead. And Saturn, just like all the other archetypes, they are in service to the sun, gold. And so Saturn is really about how do we, alchemizing all that lead into that golden sun that lives within us to live from that place. So Saturn is constantly keeps giving us these opportunities to transform the lead that drags us down into the higher heavens. It's not a coincidence that Aquarius, the sign of Aquarius, which comes after Capricorn, before the Uranus was found, or at least what we consider to be a planet Uranus, before it was discovered, Saturn was associated with Aquarius, which represents freedom. Like, in a sense, like the complete opposite of Capricorn, what seems to be, but in an inverted reality. Capricorn is the foundation for that Aquarian age. But if we have an inverted Capricorn, then how are we going to get to that Aquarian age? It's going to kind of like, whoa. So it's just, again, it's beautiful to see the cosmic play and the story, and everything has a meaning when we go deeper into it and decoding, like, how come Saturn was associated with Aquarius? Well, what's there? So Saturn actually does hold the key to freedom and unity consciousness and higher realms that actually be, because Aquarius and Neptune, Aquarius and Pisces are considered to be the transpersonal, that's beyond this reality. So Saturn was associated with Aquarius. So let's think about that for a moment. Then Saturn does hold the key for that Aquarian age, for that Aquarius consciousness, Aquarian consciousness, which is also so much like, so the opposite of patriarchy, and everybody has to be the same. This militant, it's been associated with Saturn, militant, boom, you got to stick to the program, sir. Then Aquarius is the rebel. You're not going to tell me what to do, how to do it, when to do it. It's the individual expression that is part of the whole. That's the power and the beauty of Aquarius. There is the community aspect of Aquarius, but not in this, we all have to look the same and be the same and talk the same. And no, we all have an individual expression that is beautiful, that is serving the whole.
That's amazing. And just the note about Aquarius and Pisces being, which is kind of outside. I mean, if you look at the 12 signs, 1 through 10 would be underneath, and that's sort of what we think as like a 10 days mathematics all encompassing bubble. But then you've got these two extra bits, the 11 and 12, coming in to just stir things up and make sure it doesn't get into that repetitive sameness. So it makes sense that Aquarius would carry the energy with Pisces following as this sort of dissolution of all of that, so that we can begin anew and start that cycle all over again. So it is perfect. It's perfect in every which way that it unfolds and shows itself. So just really grateful for you breaking all this down for us.
Oh, Justin, I can literally, like, I have a ton of notes. I'm like trying to do my best, to like stick to everything that has been coming through. And I can literally speak about this for days upon days, because there's just no end to it. As much as I like to keep things simple, and it is simple, but it's fun because, yeah, there are many different rabbit holes that we can go into and apply this to many different things as it relates to our human experience on a physical level, on a spiritual level. Yeah. So maybe we do some questions.
Yeah, we can certainly see if anyone would like to chime in or jump in the discussion today. So yeah, does anyone have any questions about what we've discussed thus far, what Noa has brought forward, or just a question, yeah, in general, or perhaps something you want to share about your experience in this capacity? I know it's a lot to digest and work through, so yeah, we'll see. I'll just pass it off and see if anyone wants to jump in. Yeah, I think everyone is feeling quiet today, maybe just taking it all in. So yeah, Noa, was there anywhere else you wanted to take us today in this discussion? We certainly can start wrapping up and save it for another time if you like, but I'm happy to keep going if you'd like to as well. So whichever way you'd like to go.
Well, the one more piece that that I want to add to this is the polarity point of Capricorn. Because in evolutionary astrology, there is a big emphasis actually on the polarity point, because it's what seems to be polarity, right? And we even brought it up last week with a conversation about the divine feminine and the divine masculine, what seems to be polarities, right? And then we see it in astrology so beautifully, because we have the 12 signs as we know them, and we have 6 pairs. So 6 points of polarity. And each sign and each archetype has a polarity point. And so when it comes to Saturn and Capricorn, well, let's start with Capricorn. The polarity point of Capricorn will be Cancer. And Justin, even you mentioned the solstice of December, where we start winter, or at least, what we consider to be winter in the Northern Hemisphere. And then the summer solstice, that's when we get into the season of Cancer, summertime in the Northern Hemisphere. So, and that is the divine cross of creation, in a sense, that cardinal cross, where we have the solstices and the equinox. And how incredible is that we have Cancer and Capricorn, north and south, Capricorn, Saturn, Cancer is the moon, right? So we have, it's hard for me to relate to Saturn as masculine anymore, by the way. I don't apply that to myself no more. But we have the moon and Saturn, and then Aries and Libra, Venus and Mars. So we have instead of saying masculine and feminine, even with Saturn and the moon, it's the divine the divine father and the divine mother. That resonates with me more than saying divine masculine, divine feminine now when it relates to the moon and Saturn. I would say more about Venus and Mars. That's more of like the divine masculine, divine feminine, kind of a play of the zodiac. And the moon and Venus are, if we just stick to the luminaries and the planetary bodies, those are the feminine aspects of the zodiac, the moon and Venus. So that is the cardinal cross to begin with. And we have Saturn's polarity point being the moon, and Capricorn's polarity point being Cancer. So in order for us to, I would say, decode and fully understand a particular archetype, we also need to incorporate and look at the polarity point. So that's where, again, one of the reasons why Capricorn and Saturn have been distorted, because the polarity point has been ignored, the Divine Mother. That feminine aspect. So although Saturn, or again, more the distorted expression of Saturn or interpretation of Saturn is that of like form, masculine, but that's because the Divine Mother has been forgotten. She hasn't been placed in the equation. That's the polarity point. Now, in order for Venus to be in her full Venusian expression, she needs Mars, and vice versa. Not needs in terms of like need, but they complement each other. That's the best way to explain it. It's not a need. It's like, I complement you, you complement me. And that's when that, we're talking about the divine child, what can manifest from that infusion. So Saturn without the moon is a distorted Saturn that has forgotten what it's here to do. And vice versa. Yeah. The moon with no Saturn is like a crybaby. Just, yeah. So I just wanted to touch on that, like how important it is to, and then in the personal chart, the same thing applies to your personal chart, especially if you do have concentration of planets in a particular sign. It's very important to even find balance and harmony in one's life, to start bringing more emphasis, focus, attention, love to that polarity point. Because obviously it's more comfortable for us, and it just flow easily, because that's where all the energy is concentrated, is in that particular archetype. But it's the polarity point that is going to help unlock more of that archetype that is dominant in your field, and will bring it in to life in a richer way. And sometimes we want to avoid the polarity point, but it's actually where our greatest fulfillment and evolution is that polarity point. And then, again, we're looking at different dynamics, because if you have planets in that polarity point that is opposing some things, then it's whatever archetype's dancing there. And it's just fun, like the whole chart is kind of doing its thing. And especially in evolutionary astrology, there's an emphasis on Pluto. So Pluto in the chart represents the soul. And the soul's intention. The gecko just was agreeing. The soul's intention, and this is the spiritual alignment that I was talking about as well. This is what Saturn is aligning us, is to come back to that soul's intention that sometimes is slightly or very different than what the personality is believing or perceiving its life to be or be about. So that's the great letting go. Okay. And the karma, to unravel from that. But Pluto, it represents the soul, and it's the Pluto polarity point that is one of the most important focal points in one's chart. Because it's showing us, okay, this is the soul's intention in this life, and the greatest evolution, or the evolutionary potential of that particular soul, lays in that polarity point of Pluto. And we tie in the nodes, south node, north node. I don't want to get too technical, but we tie in all those aspects to unlock the God's intended design for that particular seed.
Yeah, amazing. That's why we do have to, you mentioned the cross of the cardinals, the solstices, the equinox. We do have to lay ourselves on that cross and be crucified in order to go around this whole process, to die so that we can be reborn. But you can't do it with an imbalance. It's a balanced cross, not the cross that we're shown within the sort of Christian religion is distorted. It really is about that balanced cross. It is that balance within the circle, which represents the process. And we have to lay ourselves on that to truly go through. So it just shows up in every which way, and so very helpful to read these stories. Whatever ancient text you're reviewing, they were all using the stars as elements within these stories to bring us back to the full fruition of who we are. So to not necessarily just take them literally and look at them from this larger scale, you start to see these nods and decodes from the night sky and what we're seeing in these celestial bodies as they move around us. So it's it's amazing. It truly, there's no limit to the wonder that can be discovered within this. And yeah, I'm just blown away by hearing all of this. So thank you again.
No, yeah, it's it's so fun. I love that you brought up the cross and how that's been distorted too. What hasn't been? Oh my God. How interesting that it's the vertical line that is longer than the horizontal, and vertical represents the masculine and the horizontal represents the feminine. So that's a interesting one. When you said that, I'm like, yeah, of course. And when you look at astrology, everything has each zodiac sign, each of the cosmic body has a glimpse, like a symbol, and the Earth has the circle with the even cross in it. Yeah. And the polarity point, just going back to the polarity point thing, because we've been talking about Pisces so much. The polarity point of Pisces is Virgo. Why is that? Because Pisces is it's the unseen. Yeah, it's beyond this reality. And Virgo is like, it's all about here in the body and day-to-day life. It's practical spirituality, basically. It's to bring spirit into the embodied state. Virgo, to me, one of the key words is embodiment, period, and purity. It's pure spirituality. It's embodied spirituality. It's practical spirituality. It's day-to-day spirituality. It's not necessarily like the glamorous, what can be very Piscean, that it's, like I said earlier, look at the magician in the circus and all the crystals and the smokes and the thing. Nothing wrong with that, but how much of that is actually embodied? How much of that is being lived day to day? Day to day. This is the divine trine, the divine earth trine of Capricorn, Virgo, and Taurus. And no coincidences that we have both of the giants, Jupiter and Uranus, just met in Taurus, and they are in Taurus and will be actually Jupiter will be exiting quite shortly, in June, but Uranus is staying in Taurus until, I believe, 2025, at the end there. So those two are in Taurus. Then we had Pluto that just left Capricorn, but it's going retrograde in a few days. It's in Aquarius now, and it's going to go back to Capricorn, the last degree. It's going to hang out at the last degree of Capricorn for a while, for the rest of this year, actually. And it's going to return to Aquarius for good for the next 20 years, right at the beginning of 2025. So there's still unfinished karma. The last degree of Capricorn, any last degree of any sign is holding so much, because it's the last degree. You can think about, like, the last of the last has accumulated all the previous degrees, and it's loaded. So in Capricorn, just going back to what we spoke earlier, the structures, the forms, everything that is carrying so much karma is going to be demolished. And we can apply that individually and then collectively, because Pluto is that's the demolisher. That's I'm going to demolish it all. That's the phoenix rising up from the ashes, but we got to burn it down to the ashes first. That's demolishing. So it's going back to Capricorn for a little bit. And so we have the Taurus, Uranus is still there. Pluto is revisiting for the last time for the next 248 years, cycles upon cycles upon cycles. And then Virgo, we might not have any big bodies there right now, but it is the polarity point of Pisces, where Neptune and Saturn is, like I spoke earlier, like I shared earlier. And we have Black Moon Lilith in Virgo, and that is a different body that may require a complete different segment, Justin, because Black Moon Lilith basically represents the feminine on a very deep level, and it's the part of the feminine that has been rejected, that has been pushed aside and feared. And this is where in an individual chart, wherever Black Moon Lilith is, we can see that some fears can live there, inhibitions, parts of oneself that have been rejected. And then collectively right now, we are moving through Black Moon. And Black Moon Lilith stays in one sign for about 9 months. Not a coincidence either, 9 months, the embryo. So she's in Virgo, right? So there is that emphasis again on the body, the embodiment. Why has the body been neglected when it comes to spirituality? And there's a lot of spiritual teachings out there, actually, that within the New Age, within the spiritual traditions that, deem the body as like unimportant. It's not the only thing and not the most important thing, but it's very important when we realize what is actually living inside of us and the divinity that this body is made of, ultimately, that it's not just a walking sack of bones and blood and that is going to die one day. Like, what a false, distorted, completely false idea. So Virgo is that embodied state, and it's the harvest. When we put in the work, we harvest, and this is the earth signs, right? It's the put in the work and bring things into form. So, of course, I'm bringing my lens into it because I'm so passionate when it comes to the body, and I really see that as a very crucial, significant missing piece within many spiritual circles and people that truly want to awaken more and find truth. And then there's like, well, but what about your health? Like, what do you ingest every day? Like that's Virgo. Virgo is the digestive system, actually. Colon. Well, it's the entire digestive tract, not just the colon, but that's Virgo, our intestines. And as we know, that's like one of the biggest issues for most humans. And so that's the kind of spirituality that I'm interested in. It's like, how willing are we to explore the body for what it is and bring it to a state of purity? Like Virgo is the virgin, right? But what does it mean, virgin? It's not like, again, what the idea that we have. Virginity is about, it's just purity. It's about purity. And that's the journey. That's the journey home to Cancer.
Journey to Cancer. The water sign, as the baptism of water, is that purification of the body. And that's why Jesus said John the Baptist was the greatest of his time, because that baptism of water is essential to cleanse the lower five, the 5 physical senses, so that we can rise to the heavenly realms, which is what the Christ represents, that baptism of fire, to burn away all of the distortion and the lies and step into the truth of who we are. But we can't really do that without having a clean temple. We have to have that cleansed physical vessel in order to even let go of the continual naggings and pains and aches and of what poor health can bring. So if our body is always crying out to us in disarray and disrepair, then finding that stillness to even enter into the high mind is next to impossible. So that's why it's essential to do that baptism of water first, to cleanse that vessel first. So yeah, well said.
Yeah, and internally, yeah, and not just like the act of splashing water over your body. I mean, great. That's not gonna take the muck out of your intestines, that's for sure. And it's I love what you said, because we touched on this a little bit last week. Each element is dependent on the other element, right? So when it comes to the body and the purification that we are speaking about, if we look at air being what we call prana, right, like life force, there's obstruction to the element of air, the level of prana, chi, life force that can actually circulate in the body when there isn't sufficient hydration. Systematically, most individuals are completely dehydrated. It has nothing to do with how much water you're drinking. On a cellular level, most people, most bodies are very, very dehydrated and acidic. And so when there isn't sufficient hydration, that's the water element moving through the body, there will be some sort of obstruction to various degrees to the air element that can actually flow through the body. And if there's obstruction to the flow of air in the body, then there's the fire, which is intuition, which is creativity, which is that higher mind. The fire element is also going to be tampered because there's not enough air to fuel it. So the water element is so crucial because it also nourishes the earth element. With no water, the earth will just be barren, the element itself. So if we go back to our bodies as the solid matter of the body being earth, related to the earth element, with no water, it's desert. It's just, well, and even beyond that. So it's the water element cannot be spoken enough about, and how it is like such a feminine archetype of feminine energy, that water element, and it has so many different applications internally and externally, and what it represents, and the holy trinity of water in the zodiac, as I mentioned earlier, of Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces. It's like, moving through those layers of water to get to a higher place when it comes to our spiritual development. So the water supports all of that, like you said, that even our higher mind and the higher energy center is dependent on the flow of what's going on underneath those layers.
Yeah, amazing. We've got a couple of people who have raised their hands, or at least we had one earlier. So let's shift to a question and see what comes up. I see Donadika. Raise your hand. Go ahead.
Hi, Justin. Hi, Noah. Thanks for taking my question. Noah, I didn't want to get too far away from this before jumping in and asking you, and I hope it's not like pulling you back or out of sequence or anything. But you mentioned the Black Lilith, and I had only heard that once before, and I just wondered, there was something called the True Lilith, and mean Lilith, and what's the difference between those two? If I could ask that, please.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not one so much to go into like the technical, what's the difference here, what's the difference there. It's basically different calculations. And just like with the Vedic system of astrology and the Western tropical system of astrology, it's based on different calculations. So some astrologers will look at Black Moon Lilith, like mean or the true, and the same thing applies to the nodes. Actually, there's the true and then the mean, and the differences are minute. And I don't know in depth, like I can't answer this question in complete depth. I just know that it's different calculations based on different factors, and you can always look at both. That's my go-to. I have my moon in Libra, so it's in Sun conjunct Jupiter, so it's always not one or the other. It's both and more. So it's just going to give you a richer interpretation, even if you look at both aspects and both sides. But when it comes to the technical explanation of that, that's not, I can't really give an exact answer.
Okay, no worries. I just didn't know if that played a factor in anything. Oh, like I said, because I had only heard that Black Lilith thing in mention. Like I was watching someone else basically have their chart read, and it came up, and I was like, "What is that?" And then I was just trying to tie it somehow to the biblical Lilith and how that tied in together. And one other quick thing I just wanted to check with you. This goes way back to earlier when you were speaking about the water signs, not necessarily being water signs, but ether. And I kind of I was staying at my sister's house this weekend, and I walked in on my sister and brother-in-law were watching a movie, and it was about it was a whole like documentary on near-death experiences, and they had all these great different people being interviewed and whatnot. But someone I like came in at this part right where someone had drowned, and that's where they had their near-death experience, and they said this actually happened to my sister as well. And so we were kind of having these like, yeah, that happened to you. This was it like that for you? And like we were kind of doing like that. And what the person on the movie, on the documentary, said was at some point they kind of like succumbed to the drowning, and they were taken in this near-death experience, and it was like this, able to breathe and everything. It was no panicking, it wasn't any of that. And I happened to be there when my sister went through this, but she was in shallow water, and I was a little kid. I'm like 12 years younger than my sister, and I was just like reaching out for my sister. I could see she wasn't panicking, she wasn't choking or anything like that. And so we were just kind of like throwing ideas back and forth, and what we thought is, is there a fact? Do we factor in the fact that our bodies are 75-80% water, that this would be like just very normal for us, that maybe that's where we were, and thinking about the Atlantean thing, and that's where we were, and so therefore that's why we can easily assimilate back to that. And so I just wondered your thoughts on that.
Wow, that's so beautiful. Really beautiful. Who's speaking again? The name? Is it?
I'm Carol, and my screen name is Donadika.
Oh, okay, Carol. Thank you for sharing that. It's so beautiful, and it represents Pisces so amazingly well. Death, also near death, all that. That's very Piscean. The other side, you know. And that what you said resonates with me very much so. If you are familiar with freediving, that's not something that I have done yet. It's just I can hold my breath for a long time and dive in, but freediving, it's a skill, or I would say in relation to what you're saying, it's just remembering what we are actually designed to do and be, the creatures of the water. So in freediving, after you've developed that forgotten skill, there's some people that they dive into pretty deep deep levels in the ocean with no tanks, with nothing, just free diving. That's what it is. And they can stay down there for a significant amount of time. When I say significant, it's more than just a minute. And there's a difference also between not breathing, at least in the way that we know to breathe, in shallow water, and it's a whole different ball game when you add the pressure of depth. And so when the skill is developed enough, then there's the ability to stay in relatively deep waters for an extended period of time. And when I say that, there's some people that can 4 or 5 minutes, and I don't remember like the person that can, there's like a record, 15 minutes or something like that, of just free diving. So you can definitely look it up online. It's fascinating. And so in my own feeling, to answer your question, and knowing, then yes, there's a thread of our truth and who we are and where we really came from that holds that reality. And so we are remembering all these things. You know, that's part of the spiritual evolution that some of us, depending on where you're at, are going to experience very extensively in the next couple of years. The remembrance of those realms and how we can actually apply that to life here on Earth. Like, it doesn't mean that you need to move down into the bottom of the ocean and live there, but who knows? Like, where are we heading in terms of our evolution and what is and will be possible. So that was just a beautiful share on your behalf, and it does open the door to curiosity and the question of, well, what is possible really, right? And that's going back to the conversation of Saturn being in Pisces, is whatever you thought this form to be is dissolving, and that might look like, oh, you can be underwater for 5 and 10 minutes and be okay.
Yeah, I love that, Carol. Thanks for sharing. And it reminds me of kind of the truth they love to insert into the films and shows and things that we've been looking at, and just examining the Avatar movies and how they've been showing us the truth within that. So the first one was all about remembering our deeper connection with the earth around us, and the trees being giants, and our connection with the animals and that sort of sense. But then the second one took an examination of our connection with the water, and learning to renew our abilities to dive more deeply and to not be so dependent on the breath of air, because all of the elements are really quite interchangeable as far as what we can utilize in any moment to sustain. We just have kind of conditioned ourselves to thinking that it has to be this one way. I have to have breath. I have to have food all the time. I have to be drinking all the time in order to sustain this body. And I'm not saying this is an easy process to let go of that, but truly letting go of the fact that we don't need any of the elements outside of the etheric representation of all of them together to truly sustain and fuel ourselves. So going into deeper and higher levels of our relationship with these elements and what fuels our body to move is part of the evolutionary journey that we're on. So I have no doubt that we'll have before, and we will once again revisit and expand on these abilities. You know, we're training our superhero abilities to step back into the full fruition of what we can do, and that's just one exciting one that yes, we will absolutely tap into. So thank you for bringing that up, Carol. And it's yeah. Did you have any more thoughts or shares on that topic?
No, thank you. I appreciate you. You know, I just wanted something. It's not like you could go look this up. You know, like, oh, you know, does that mean it's this? You know, and especially that it was tied to this movie. But I just like something in me just said, well, that's just like going home. That's just like going back to what we've known. And you know, and then I don't get that deep with my sister into the Atlantean stuff because her eyes start glazing over, and then, you know, I get that look, that standard, like, oh, here she goes, you know. So you go, okay, I'm not going to go down that path. But that's why I wanted to talk to you guys about that. But thank you so much. I really appreciate, and great talk. Thank you, Noah. I love all the things you bring to our community. Thanks, Justin.
Thank you, Carol. I love that. Yeah, that. There's some things that you don't bring to the family table, that's for sure, or better not to. And I do want to add, because this is something that is very alive in my life currently, and a very strong calling that I have. And it's not new, but it's part of what we are speaking about and our connections to the Atlantean timeline. There's a modality that is called Watsu. Water therapy, aquatic body work. There are different names to it. Watsu is kind of like the big name, the big umbrella, and it's basically a therapy that is done in the water. So there's no, as opposed to body work that you receive on a table or on the ground, it's obviously earth-based and beautiful and amazing and great. And there's the water therapy, in which you're not on solid ground, you're in the water. You're being held by the therapist and being moved in the water. And there's also even underwater, like you have clips that you put on your nose. The therapist kind of gives you a sign before you go into the water, so you can be ready. And you get the experience of body work, but in the water. And there's movement, obviously, because there's no gravity. There are movements that can be done in the water that cannot be done on solid ground. So I'm mentioning this because, again, it's very alive for me. I received my first session ever in that modality many, many years ago. And I was so blown away. And looking back now, also, I was at this place which they had dolphins there. And the dolphin and the Atlantean timeline, Watsu, everything, it's all interconnected. Like I have such a memory of a dolphin. Like I know that I was one. And so that first experience of Watsu touched me on such a profound level. And that was like 2009 or something like that. And it all, that was the seed. And since then, I had received different Watsu sessions throughout the years, nothing on a regular basis, for very large periods of time in which I didn't do any of that. But then just recently, it started knocking on my door, very, very strongly. And that's when, again, you can look at someone's chart and can really connect the dots. Like, oh, that's why it's knocking on your door now, 2024. So it's perfect. But it's been knocking on my door so strongly, and not just to go and receive a Watsu session, but to become a practitioner and add that to my toolbox, because it's an absolute essential piece to the puzzle, like the water element that we are speaking of, and how the water has the ability, just the energy of the water, to dissolve or help dissolve stress and trauma that is locked in the system. That is very different than receiving body work, deep tissue, and things like that, which of course help to move those obstructions from the cellular memory on various levels. But then when you bring in the water element and its effect on the nervous system and everything that might be locked in the system that is unconscious, the water has the ability to, as I said, dissolve it and just wash it away in a way that is much more gentle, in a way that bypasses any conscious or intellectual understanding and concept. Because the thing with when you receive a Watsu session, you lose all track of space. Time, of course, but also space, because your eyes are closed and you are being moved in a body of water. And when you open your eyes, it's just this, where am I? There's a complete, that's so high, you get in, it's just like almost a psychedelic experience, to be honest with you, but there is a release of DMT even during those sessions, especially when you go underwater. And the DMT release is just ultimately just the pineal coming online. So the water therapy, just to sum it up, is it's a technology, right? We are going back to the distorted forms and structures. We put AI and technology as we know it, is like phones and computers, on the pedestal of human achievement, and actually the pure form or the divine form of technology is like right here, we're sitting in it. And the elements help facilitate the unlocking of that technology, and the water plays a crucial role in our evolution in this moment. And yes, the fact that our bodies are mainly liquids, that kind of is like a hint, just by the way. So I'm excited. That's about what's coming and what we'll be discovering about our capabilities and capacities, and how to work with these elements in a way that really enhances our development, our human development.
Yeah, it is quite exciting to remember all of this. Not that we're discovering anything new, we're just coming back to the basics and realizing just how magical this creation is and has always been, so that we can step into utilizing or dancing with creation in a way that's harmonious for all. So yeah, the Watsu therapy is beautiful. It's not one I've received before, but it's definitely high on my list to have at some point. And then going deeper into recognizing these water-based, it doesn't take long searching through the rabbit holes of Tartarian and Atlantean technologies and what we've lost, to find these water-based therapies and frequency-based therapies, and having the combination of such. So I can just imagine having a Watsu pool with healing frequencies emitted into the water as you're participating in that therapy itself. Just the possibilities are endless, and it's really quite simple. Because it's all about coming back to simplicity. We don't need anything external to us to fulfill ourselves or to make ourselves whole again. We just have to get rid of all the gunk and junk and stagnation and stuff that's getting in between us and that simplicity. So, yeah, beautifully said. It's an exciting modality to explore further, and I'm excited to hear about your journey with it for sure.
Yes. Then I could give you a session.
Sounds amazing. Sign me up for that. And yeah, I think I'm not sure if this was an accident press or not, but I saw Kakashi Mike. You had your hand raised. Did you have a question or something you wanted to add to the discussion? Yeah, no worries. I think that might have been an accident. Oh, there you are. What's up, brother? We can see you. Can't hear you though. Oh, there you are. Hey.
Can you guys hear me? Yeah.
Yeah, loud and clear. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Justin. How are you guys doing? I was just just hearing about these new experiences, and man, how can I say this? This year has been changing a lot, metaphorically and spiritually. I've been seeing it around the world and also within myself. Um, Man, I don't know where to start. Um, First of all, how are you doing, Justin?
I'm good, brother. It's good to see you and hear from you. It's been a minute, but happy to have you join us.
Yeah. How do I say this, man? So this year, I would like to share an experience. Follow up with the question. So, with the experience that's been happening this year, I mean, it's been like life changing for me in a way. Um, well, as you know, that last time we met in Dallas, I did bring along a partner of mine, and 8 years of with this relationship, it just sadly didn't work out. So I've been, I guess I'm just totally just giving up on this human life that we have. I'm now seeing that I have to be alone to work myself within fully, and I'm glad that this experience of this 8 years of trying to be human in a way. I say human as like doing the normal thing. Going to school. Basically falling into the matrix of the whole college and then getting a job and getting a wife and getting kids, getting your house, and you just fall into more debt and all that stuff. Um, I could see that it's not for me. Um, and it's been hard. It's been real hard. And I know that last time you messaged me if how was I? Uh, I was not doing good, brother. Last month, this month, it's been really hard. But I've been learning that I have to work within myself. That God gave me this chance to maybe do a rebirth on myself again, fully, without worrying about my partner. Um, yeah, it's kind of hard working on yourself and working on your partner, especially a partner that is not willing to change. And that's a life lesson that I've learned that hey, no matter what you do to a person, if a person's not willing to change, they're not gonna change. No matter how much you talk to them, how much you show them. Um, some people are just not meant to wake up, I guess. So that's a hard lesson I've learned. And I guess my question is how do you learn to forgive someone?
Yeah, I mean, that's a beautiful question, and a very vulnerable and very pertinent share. So thank you for bringing that forward and just expressing in this way, because it's something that we're all going through to varying degrees. And that's as we mentioned earlier, of having that compassion for all these different movements that are happening. You know, that old structure, that old way. You're not meant, it feels uncomfortable to try and fit into society or the normal ways that we've been prescribed, because we're not designed for that. You know, we're designed for so much more. And we have chosen to experience this evolution, this cycle, in a way of seeing what these confines felt like. What would it feel like to fall into the bondage of slavery, just so I can break free of those bonds and step back into my full expression again? We wouldn't know what that feeling felt like unless I'd actually gone through it. So just some aspects there within, kind of coming to terms with that feeling of discomfort. And then as far as the question of, how do we forgive? It really starts with, as much as we can have good intentions on interacting with others, and we might see a path that might be a higher form or something that could really help somebody. I mean, just looking at a simple example of seeing somebody dying because they're consuming toxic foods over and over and over again. We might feel that inspiration within us to want to step in and say, what are you doing? Like, do you see how destructive this is for your body? Do you see the problems that this is causing? And I think we've all gone through modes like that. But even having those intentions, even if we feel they are good and it's for that higher expression, it still is a form of control, and it's still a form of subjugation. It's still a form of saying, I know more than, or I'm going to exert my free will and dominate your free will. So letting go of that desire is challenging, but that's essential to really recognize that I don't have control. I don't have the ability to exert my free will over another. And everyone is truly just experiencing what they need to at any given moment. So yeah, that's a hard one to wrap around when we're dealing with people that we love. But if we stay in that space of wanting to control or wanting to steer someone, then I'm creating a division, and that's where that difficulty of forgiving comes into play, because somehow I feel like I take it personally that they're operating in a way that I feel is not best for them or for us or for however the situation is, instead of just saying, okay, they're going through their journey, having that free will to experience it as they need to. And all I can do is support if invited. Yet if I'm not, I have to let that go. So yeah, I hope that makes sense. It's tricky to get into for sure. And forgiveness is a great topic to go over and use these sort of real world examples to cover. But I'd say that's what I'd say first and foremost, is just letting go of any, no matter how well intentioned my desire is on somebody else. If I have intention of steering somebody else, then I'm going to be setting myself up to suffer at some point, and I'm going to be setting myself up to have some discourse between them. Truly just being myself, being free to move about as I need to, and allowing all others around me to move about as they need to, and then trusting that flow. So in relationships, no matter what type, trusting that if we're aligned, then we'll be in relationship. If we're not aligned, then we won't. And just allowing that movement to occur without any sort of fear of losing. That's the attachment. That's why the attachment is the root cause of all suffering. So when I grow attached to some idea of a relationship that it has to look like this, or I have to feel this way in this, then I'm always going to be setting myself up to suffer. So as best I can, releasing that attachment and saying, and just being okay with it, being okay with however it needs to flow and move. That's where the peace truly is found, is the peace that finding peace and stillness in the only constant, which is change, the continual evolution of moving all around us. That's the only constant that is truly here. So finding peace with that is essential for my own well-being. So yeah, that's what I'd share first and foremost. But I'm curious, Noah, if you have any thoughts on that capacity as well. That was a great question. You're muted, Noah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can.
Okay. Yeah, it's unclear. I clicked the microphone, but it doesn't show me if I'm muted or not.
Yeah, and I think, hey, Mike, if you could,
It's
if you mute your mic, that makes it better.
definitely a loaded topic, and thank you. Yeah, so definitely a loaded topic, and just like we spoke about earlier, and we said that it can be a very challenging task to forgive in our own personal lives, and then when we zoom out and see some of the things that are happening in the world. So my answer to this, or direction, and just in what you said, I wholeheartedly agree with everything that Justin shared. And I will add that, and of course, this is a process, Mike, right? And this is an opportunity for you to look deeper within, and first of all, ask yourself, what is it that I need to forgive? And how does that, or how is that showing you something, some aspect in yourself, a way that you've treated yourself? And that's the part that is asking for forgiveness. That the other person, whatever the circumstances are and were, was a reflection of an aspect of yourself that is looking for acknowledgement, for love and forgiveness and compassion. And this is the great work. There's no, relationships are just mirrors in whatever way, shape, or form the relationship might show up. And it's the people in our lives, those are people that we have summoned into our lives to help us evolve. And it's a process to arrive to a place in which we can actually see everything as a gift. So at the end of the day, is there actually something to forgive or actually to thank for? That in the moment, of course, it can be the most painful, sometimes excruciating, heart-wrenching experience that brings us to our knees. And beyond that lays the greatest gift ever, that may reveal itself quite soon after the heart-wrenching to my knees moment, or it might reveal itself 20 years later. Doesn't matter. At the end of the day, everything that occurs is a gift. And so when I can shift myself to that position, to sit in that seat of gratitude, because there's only divine love here. So this person actually gave me the greatest gift of my life. And then the whole even notion of forgiving changes to from forgiveness to, well, actually, thank you for for everything that I received from you, even if I didn't want it, because that's our ego not wanting to experience unpleasantness or sadness. Or Justin brought up detachment. I'm not saying those things are easy. Hey, it's like I've had my fair share of that, trust me. But that really is, it changes so much when we are able to see everything is a gift. There's no exception. There's absolutely no exception. No matter how it may seem on the outside, is to not get lost in the appearance, so to speak. But everything is a gift. Everything is a gift. And that could be a very powerful time for you to shift into that seat of power, ultimately.
Yeah, beautifully said. Thank you. It is truly that having that gratitude is key. So even what helps me is to recognize that everyone in my life, no matter how much how much I perceive that they cause problems or they piss me off or trigger me, or how much I love and appreciate and want to have them around, every single one in my life is a teacher for me, is here to teach me something, is playing a role in my life to teach me something. So your ex-partner, she came into your life to teach you a very specific set of things, to share with you what you needed to learn in this capacity for this moment in time. And what's also included in those lessons is how to let go of attachment to this idea that we've formulated within our mind. Because that's all attachment is it's the mind running rampant on thoughts, creating a false reality. And then we cling to that. We cling to that false reality. And then when that starts to move, we get upset and we suffer. So that's why attachment is the root cause of all suffering, because if we're just allowing that flow, then we're never clinging on like that. We're allowing life to happen, and we're playing a beautiful part in it. And we're appreciating every lesson that is brought to us and everyone that is bringing those lessons. But then we release, knowing that there is no separation at all. We're all connected always. So she's still there as a beautiful influence on your life, and she will be forever. She'll have that expression and that imprint on you to give you that continual evolution that you get to continue transmuting from lead into gold. So taking those sort of uncomfortable feelings of heartbreak and release in that sense, and transmuting that into a space of gratitude. And it's like, wow, how beautiful to have someone like that come into my life, to get to learn these lessons, to teach me in these ways. And then even when we're not physically together, still be teaching me in all of these beautiful ways, so that I can find that strength within myself to really build that solid foundation, so that whomever comes along next, I have that deeper sense of knowing of who I am and where I stand. If we're always basing our reality, our identity off of relationships, then we don't ever truly know ourselves. We don't ever truly see what that is, to step outside of what does this look like beyond the lens of somebody else or something else. So we have periods of our lives where we are meant to be in isolation or be in this state of aloneness, so that we can truly find, what is it that makes Mike Mike? What is it that makes Justin Justin? And not get attached to those ideas either, but truly just enjoy that observation of that expression. And then when I get to have a moment when Mike gets to find another partner, another dance with another self, he gets to have that deeper sense of knowing of like, okay, this is who Mike is. And this is what this relationship brings. And I don't need to bind anyone else to my idea of self, but just allow that dance to continue unfolding and that expression to reach in greater heights. So it's a story, and there would be no story without those sad moments. And so we get to celebrate and cherish those sad moments for the depth that they bring. This would be a very boring experience if we didn't have the full range of emotions to go through, to have the feelings of immense joy and happiness and satisfaction paired with those moments where it's like, okay, everything is falling away. And I can dwell in that victim mentality and stay in the dumps because of that. Or I can say, okay, this is a necessary movement. This is a part of the cycle. This is a part of what the shift that needs to occur. And everything that's happening within it is guiding me to a higher expression. It's happening for me to bring me to that space of new awareness. So anyway, it's certainly challenging, much easier to talk about, helpful to talk about. So I'm really glad that you did. And I'm glad that you came forward and shared with us today. And just want to let you know that, I'm always there. And this group is always there to reflect upon and share with and go over in whatever aspects seem to come up, so that we can take that back into our individual journey and help with that refinement. That's why we're doing this all together, to help each other, to help guide each other home. So happy that you're here within that. And yeah. Did you have something else, Noah? Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. Something that just came through. So I will share it, and Mike, it may resonate with you and other listeners. What I found that, just based on Mike's share, in relationships, when it comes to the opposite gender, or if you are in same gender, it's whatever that person is to you, more of the masculine, more of the feminine. But if I'll just stick to Mike's example, it's a woman. In those dynamics and the forgiveness aspect that you were asking about, most of the time, or in many cases, it can be something that is being shown to you regarding your mother, or just the feminine in your life, but then you can trace it back to the mother, because ultimately, when we feel hurt in any situation, who is feeling hurt? Who is that inside of us? It's that little kid. It's that little child. It's the little Mike that is feeling whatever it is, whatever the situation was. And so whatever little Mike is feeling hurt about, usually it can be traced back to the mother, the relationship with the mother, the family. It's just, this is an opportunity to go back into little Mike and ask him, like, what do you need? What wasn't given to you? That now, this is the gift that partner gave you, that now that aspect is coming up for you to nurture, because it might have been in the closet for your whole life. And that is the journey, that it's really just looking at our relationship with our primary caretakers, the biological parents on this earth. And there's so much there for us to learn from, and what we did or didn't receive from those characters that is literally following us throughout our lives and manifest in different relationships until we bring that little child back into our conscious awareness, because there's no past, present, and future, in the sense that that little child is not, oh, this is what I used to be. Yeah, there is the version of you that was 5, but it's still here. And you actually see it in the astrology. Astrology chart is like a combination of past, present, future. And that's when you really see there's no such thing, in the sense that it's not linear. That little kid is still playing somewhere. So it can either be playing in the background, creating havoc, or it can be playing here with us and helping us to actually create. So especially in relationships, and especially in intimate partnerships, and when it's long term, like you said, 8 years, it's significant. It's like a 7-year cycle plus. there's a lot there that can be unpacked. And as I mentioned, trace it back to little Mike and mother, and some aspects perhaps that are looking for forgiveness within that relationship. So it just came through, and I wanted to share that.
Yeah, beautifully said. Thanks, Noah. Go ahead, Mike. Did you have anything to add?
No, I just wanted to thank you both. That really helped me out. It does make more sense of forgiving to saying thank you to that person for those life lessons. That does make more sense to me, and does feel like a weight kind of lifted off my shoulder. Kind of you guys, both of you all telling me those things, and that really makes more sense to me.
Yeah, well, happy to help any which way, and thank you for sharing this, because that's the beauty of being authentic and true in what we're going through. Is our stories are all intertwined and interrelated. So the things that we're each experiencing can be helpful to learn from for each of us. So it's an amazing gift for you to bring that forward here and to share with us. So I just want to thank you for that. Thank you for showing up and offering that. It's really very appreciated.
Oh, thank you too. Well, I'll be here always listening. Whenever I need to join, I'll go ahead and join. I felt like I need to join in this one, in this video, a little bit more, because talking about Parsis and Virgo, and I am a Virgo, so I mean, so I really felt like I needed to be in this conversation. But yeah, thank you too.
Yeah, appreciate you, brother.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, take care, man. Yeah, awesome. That was wonderful. Really glad to hear from Mike. As he mentioned, I had the privilege of meeting him in the Houston area and driving up to Dallas with him back in 2021, whatever that was. Yeah. So always good to see him again. And yeah, if we'll just keep throwing it open. If anyone else wants to share anything or ask a question, this would be a great opportunity to do so. No worries. Might be that. Yeah. I guess we'll just. Noah, what do you think? Do you have any more to cover or share today, or should we start winding down? What are you feeling?
Yeah, we can bring the airplane to landing, safe landing, and we can continue next week if it's on the same thread or whatever you feel inspired to share. But I feel this was a good flight.
Yeah, me too. It's been an absolute pleasure to share this experience with you all and with you, Noah. Thank you for being here to share your wisdom with us. I'm looking forward to continue deep dives into the astrological realm and all the exciting aspects that brings to us. So it's a really wonderful gift that you share and bring to us. Really appreciate that. And yeah, let's just take what we've heard today and what we've poured through to not just be something fun to listen to, although it is, but really imbue that into every experience that we're having. Recognize where these Saturnian control structures are fading and falling away out of our lives to bring forward the ability to build a new structure that is a container for heaven on earth. So to let go of the resistance to any of that falling away, to embrace the change, embrace the dissolution, so that I can step into a higher expression of me. And that goes externally and internally as well. So what within me am I resisting? What patterns, what structures, what attachments am I resistant to letting go? And where can I find that softening to let that grip loosen, so that I can truly let all of that out of my hands, so that I can accept what God is truly bringing me. So yeah, that's what I will be taking from this conversation today. And I invite you all to as well. So thank you, Noa, again. Do you have any other closing comments before we close out?
Thank you for what you just shared at the end. Greatly appreciated. And I will add to that, to do it with gentleness. This is because each and every one of us, like there's no escaping that. Each and every one of us is being invited to, what Justin said, release, allow structures to dissolve. And there's the potential of even, great disillusion of some sort, like something that maybe you really believed to be true, or that you've been following for a very long time, in whatever shape or form. It can be eating patterns or food choices or spiritual teachers, teachings, whatever it is, because it doesn't matter. Whatever the structure is that is not allowing your soul the freedom to fully dance authentically is coming to a head, is going to be shown. And so to embrace that Neptunian or Piscean surrender and seeing everything as a gift, because it might manifest in life as relationships crumbling and things that felt solid kind of dissolving away. And with that, to continue to bring gentleness to the table with yourself. Because remember, it's really that little child that is scared of letting go. So it's not about, you silly one, why are you not letting go? But it's taking that little child by the hand and really asking her or him, what are you afraid of? Or this is an opportunity to connect deeper with yourself, which is ultimately a greater connection with God. So that would be my add to what Justin said, is to really embrace yourself with a lot of compassion and care and gentleness. That Cancer moon polarity point of Saturn, and embrace yourself, like a mother would embrace her child when they don't want to graduate from first grade, but it's time.
Yeah, wonderfully said. Thank you for that. And yeah, again, thank you everyone for joining today. We will be sure to continue this conversation. We'll definitely have another one next week at the same time. So next Monday. And looking forward to that. So thank you all for being here. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day wherever you are, and take care. We'll talk to you next time. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.